This year marks the 90th anniversary of an American institution, something that affects all of us, something that we rely upon, and something that, strangely, a lot of people don't know a whole lot about with regard to its origins and whether it's actually going to be around for us in the future. Maybe you've guessed what I'm talking about. Social Security. That's right, 90 years. And Social Security has actually gone through a bit of an evolution, and it might be going through another evolution sometime soon. To keep it there for us, let's bring on an expert on this. He is the Senior Vice President of Campaigns for the American Association of Retired Persons. Yes, that's right. I got that mailer myself recently. You reach that age, and suddenly you're there for AARP. It's John Hishta. John, thanks for joining us. Do you hear that a lot? It's like, oh, I just
all the time.
I just got something in the mail. It's like this rite of passage. It's like, that's
exactly.
it. You're officially one of those older people, I guess.
And you know what I tell people, Larry? I tell people you need to embrace it.
That's right. It ain't going away. So you might as well. So 90 years. Let's go into the history a little bit, because I think people don't realize that when Social Security was first envisioned and created, it was obviously a very different time, and it was designed for a very specific purpose, wasn't it?
It sure was. It was actually the 90th anniversary is August 14th of this year. So that's when President Roosevelt signed it into being. And in those days, it was designed to be a supplemental income program for retirement folks as they aged out of the workforce. And over the years, as more and more people lost pensions and things of that nature, it's become a bigger proponent for a lot of people of their income when they retire. It just, unfortunately, for a lot of folks, it's the majority of their income because they didn't have access or don't have access to other retirement options through their work or through personal means.
Is it true that when it was first envisioned, it was specifically for widows and women who didn't have sort of their husband or a man in life? It's a different era. Everyone, don't get mad at me.
Yep.
But that was the perspective, that you had all these women who were sort of left with nothing, and they were destitute.
Well, it was both for that as well as the folks who were going to retire. And if you recall, in those days as well, the retirement age was such that people weren't living as long as they are today either. And so when it was originally set up, the length that people were on Social Security was only a few years, whereas nowadays, people live so much longer. And so the program, accounts for a lot more years for a lot of people in retirement once they reach that age.
Life expectancy was not very far beyond that retirement age.
And some people never even made it to, be able to accept Social Security benefits when they retired at that point.
And so, and you talked about the fact that it was there for people who didn't have other investment vehicles, but then something happened over the years where, you hear some people talk about sort of planning for their retirement, thinking, well, Social Security will take care of me. And so instead of a supplement, they started to rely on this as sort of the beginning, middle, and end of their income for Social Security.
Well, if you think about it, how much life has changed over the past even 40 or 50 years with respect to the workforce. Most people had the ability to collect a pension at one point in the game, and that pretty much has gone by the wayside. With the advent of the 401ks that people can pay into with their workforce, even a lot of folks today don't have access to 401ks through their workforce across the country. And so more and more people have come to rely on Social Security for the majority of their income. Today, 40% of the people on Social Security say that is literally the majority of their income they get in retirement. And for 15% of the people on Social Security, it's literally the only income they get.
Yeah. And when people in Washington, D.C. start recognizing the mathematical realities of how the trust fund operates, whether it's funded, how long it will be funded, and they start, floating the ideas of maybe we got to make some changes. Oftentimes you hear people who rely on Social Security saying, oh, hell no, don't touch my Social Security. I paid into it. A promise was made to me, and I expect to have it. But is that really how the numbers work? I mean, how many people actually are taking out of Social Security well more than what they put into it? And is that okay?
Well, I mean, over the years, much like anything else, you want people to have a reasonable retirement and the ability to pay their bills, live independently, and hopefully age with dignity over the years. And so, from a mathematical perspective, the program was originally set up for people who pay into it while they're working so that it's there on the back end for them when they do retire. And so it's not strictly a pay as you go system, but at the same time, it provides a modest income, particularly for those working folks who don't have anything else. And so, one of the problems is, though, that the amount of workers who pay into it as a percentage of the people who accept it has gone down. So originally it was 4 or 5 to 1 workers paying into for every person who collected. Now it's almost down to 2.5 to 1. So that's an issue that has to be dealt with.
In the first couple of months of the Trump administration, Elon Musk's focus with the Department of Government Efficiency looked at some of what sounded like incredible gross inefficiencies at Social Security, how checks were handled, the administrative aspects of that. And there were a lot of concerns about revamping those systems or whether there were privacy concerns. Where does that project stand right now? And do you agree that it does require some sort of upgrade to efficiencies?
Well, I think all government needs to be modernized when it comes to how we look at systems across the board, whether it's in the Social Security Administration or the Department of Defense or Department of Agriculture. What I would say, though, is that when you look at doing these things within Social Security and how the administration conducts itself, you really need to take into consideration how it affects folks who are on Social Security and need to get access to some of their records on Social Security. And so some of the things that the Social Security Administration has put forth with respect to eliminating some of the options with phone systems and things of that nature really could become egregious for folks in certain parts of the country, and there's a transition period that needs to be taken into consideration with some of these things as well. A lot of folks who are in their 80s really don't have access or the ability to go online like you and I do, Larry, and really understand how to make changes themselves. And they rely on making a phone call and talking to a live person and making sure that they get done what they need to get done. That can be done with a lot of safeguards in place. And so with the new administrator there, we're hoping that as we move forward and we modernize things, that he continues to take into account the effects of any changes that come forward.
Well, that's good because a lot of people look at this program as they look at a lot of government programs. And yes, they need to make it more efficient and make it secure. But it almost feels like there hasn't been a big focus on trying to solve some of the fraud problems. And there are definitely instances of Social Security fraud. So how do you?
Well, I would say I get that there may be some fraud, but it's very limited, very limited. So it's against the law.
We saw reports of people who apparently were like on the rolls that are 250 years old, right?
Yeah, but they weren't receiving Social Security checks. So, that was, yes, some of the rolls needed to be fixed and they were cleaned up, but nobody, who was purported to be 150 years old was receiving a check. And I think that, that needs to be stated pretty clearly. Okay. From that perspective, the amount of fraud in Social Security is very, very, very small in relation to the rest of the organization. And so I think that they recognize that they're getting a handle on that aspect of it, but at the same time, making sure that there are safeguards in place moving forward.
So the projection right now, according to the trustees, is that in a little less than a decade, there's going to be a serious problem, a serious crunch. And if anybody knows about like union pension funds or other, pension and retirement funds that are under ERISA and other federal regulations, the trustees would be in trouble if they allowed this situation to occur, that you were this close to being insolvent. So what needs to be done here? And can it be done? Because it needs to be done by politicians who don't want to make anybody angry.
Well, of course it can be done. We just have to have some politicians on both sides of the aisle who are courageous enough to tackle the issue before it becomes too late. The problem is that, as you know, Social Security is set up as a trust fund. People pay into it with the Social Security taxes as part of their regular paycheck. For employees, that's 6.2%. For employers, that's 6.2%. What has happened, though, over time is, as I suggested, the amount of money going into the trust fund is starting to not keep up with the people who are receiving the benefits. And so by the year 2033 or 2034, depending on who you talk to, if nothing changes, the trust fund at that point in the game will only be able to pay 80% of the current benefits for folks on Social Security. So that would be the equivalent of a 20% pay cut. It doesn't mean the program's going away. It doesn't mean that the program is going bankrupt. It simply means that there is a hole that needs to be fixed for current beneficiaries moving forward. And there are a variety of options on the table to do that. You also have to take into consideration that politics comes into play here, and you need elected officials on both sides of the aisle who are willing to step up and deal with this before it's too late. There are a variety of ways to find additional revenue to put into the system. Congress has dealt with bigger issues before. President Trump has stated that he wants to preserve and protect Social Security for the long run. Even he has come out and said that we shouldn't be messing around with the retirement age at this point in the game. So both sides of the aisle need to come to the table and say, here are some options.
Could it be solved with a phased approach? I mean, we began talking about the history of it and the fact that the life expectancy was only a few years after. Now, last report I saw, a married couple in retirement, the odds are 50-50 that at least one of them will make it to the age 90. So is there a way to phase that retirement age for generations? Like, for instance, if you're 45 or older now, you're still locked in. But for people who are in their 20s now, you start pushing it back for people who are just starting in the workforce.
Well, I don't think right now that that's an option. But also what I would say is we need to take into consideration folks who aren't like you and me. You know, I sit at a desk most of the day for my work as you do, but there are a lot of working Americans out there who frankly bust their butt day in and day out, whether it's for, you know, a utility company or construction work or things of that nature. And they're in no position to, you know, retire later in life. You know, they may need access to that Social Security benefit, maybe even earlier than the current age, which is 67. And so we would also like to see members of Congress and the president look at revenue options. You know, there are multiple ways to handle that as well. And if you go back into the history of Social Security, for instance, back in the 30s, almost everyone basically was paid through their W-2, whereas nowadays, you know, there's a lot of passive income that's just simply not taxed when it comes to the Social Security Trust Fund. There's also a limit on the amount of money that can be taxed on Social Security. I think the cap is around $167,000 a year. You know, you could eliminate that cap or increase it substantially and take care of a lot of the problem as it is right now.
Well, it's a challenging issue that needs to be addressed, and that's why we like to bring it up here and deliver as much information as we can so our audience can reach their own conclusions. And you helped us in that task today, so I appreciate you joining us. And it's not going away. This is definitely a conversation that's going to be happening for quite some time. Now, if you all want more information about this and you want to reach out, and by the way, you can just text John directly, and he'll answer
exactly.
all you have. But the first step is to go to the website there and get some more information about Social Security, where it stands right now, what's in play. So let me get that website for you. It's aarp.org/we earned it. There it is.
Outstanding.
AARP.org/we earned it, and you'll get a whole font of information to help you reach your conclusions as well. John, thanks. Really informative stuff. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Larry. Always a pleasure.